Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights and strategies. So sit back and relax. Let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Hello and welcome everyone to the Business Women Australia podcast show. I am Leanne Jeffery. I'm your host for today, and with me I have our very own Codeless evangelist, creator of Dark Stry, Erin Clark. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks for having me, Leanne.
Now, Erin has created this fantastic app, which we all, if you've ever seen any of our social media, we got to go on this walking tour through Perth with a bunch of really cool women, and we actually heard about some really cool badass women through Dark Stry. And the fantastic thing about Dark Stry is you've created it from concept to launch in 30 days using Codeless technology.
Yep.
So we're going to go straight into it a little bit. Tell us, how did you come up with the concept?
I think once you start to get your head around Codeless technology, it's really starting to think about when you see a problem or an opportunity. So the problem or opportunity that Dark Stry, so the self-guided walking and driving tour app that myself and my co-founder developed, was really focused at the time that we launched during COVID about attracting people back into forgotten places. I'm sure most of us remember that after COVID, a lot of our cities we were hesitant to head back into. We were all very comfortable working at home in our tracky dacks. And there were lots of hospitality businesses and other great stories out there who were really keen to see our cities activated. So our idea from concept to launch is in our first day one was we got out, put our walking shoes around and really put ourselves into the literally into the perspective of the customer. So wandered around the city, being Perth, and thinking about what would make a great day out. So what would attract people back into the city. From there in the first week, what we really focused on is what types of things, what types of experience did we want to be able to have customers involved in? So really thinking about what is it that our customers were willing to pay for. So we kind of put together a wish list of what we wanted to go shopping for, what we knew we wanted in a Codeless platform. And we worked with a great designer. So he helped us mock up the same look and feel that we use today. And so by the end of week one, we tested out a few different solutions and we were off and racing. So by week two, we already had a prototype that we developed. And because we were using that Codeless platform, we were able to do our first sort of large test with about 30 different amazing humans. We did our first test was a Perth historical pub crawl. So we found out very quickly as part of that 7 stops on a pub crawl is probably a few too many. I can tell you it's about stop 4. But by the end of the 30 days, we successfully tested both from customers in the App Store. So we were both in the Android App Store and the Apple App Store. All of our social media channels up firing. We had a website. And making connections within the touring industry in 30 days. So it really shows the power of the Codeless platform is if you've got a really clear understanding of who your customer is and what you want to do, you can then find the technology that solves that problem or opportunity.
Which leads me to the next question. What exactly is Codeless technology? Because a lot of people can't envision how it works. And for a layman like me, it sounds almost perfect.
I think we all know that there's no such thing as a perfect solution. And I think particularly with the tools like ChatGPT getting used quite a lot by different people, is people are starting to change their relationships with technology and think about the art of what's possible. So there's kind of the way to think about Codeless technology, it's almost like a spectrum. So on one end, you've got a complete non-developer. So somebody who's never written a line of code, doesn't really understand how technology is put together. And there's lots of tools online. So they're sort of like 100% no code. So you would never see a line of code. You would never have to think about HTML or any of those types of things. So there's tools online. So things like Bubble and Webflow are quite popular in that space. So it's really like you've got an idea, you jump into that platform and you just start building it as you go. So it's a very, very visual way of building software. Then in sort of the middle, you've got tools. So people who work for quite large organizations are probably used to seeing enterprise resource planning software. So things like SAP or Microsoft Dynamics. Microsoft's got a lot of stuff in this space where you've kind of got like a big core system. So whether it's your finance system or your people system, but what you can do around the outside of that system is plug in little bits and pieces. So configuration, that helps you. So again, you don't need to know the code, but it's just like little tools that you plug on the side of something that you've already got. So that's sort of in your middle type space. And then there's also what's really I find interesting is you're starting to see developers use what's called low code technology. So, if you kind of think back in the day when software used to be built, is every single piece of the code needed to be built piece by piece. Whereas now the role of a developer is really starting to change. And so it's more about gluing things together. And it sort of really starts to ask some interesting questions about, well, what is it that a software developer does? Are they someone who writes code, or are they someone that takes a business idea and translates it into something useful that for end customers?
I'll stick with my drag and drop. No, but obviously it's speeding things up. So, how does that actually impact the speed to market?
I think particularly in that startup space, it really becomes about quality of ideas. So you see a lot of startups are people who have an idea and they want to use. So the way that I'm using the definition of startup is someone who's got a great idea and they want to build something that's at scale. So we're not talking about your local cleaning company or your local lawn mowing service. We're talking about someone who's got an idea. They want to use technology to do things quite differently. And in that startup space, historically, there's always been this idea of you've got to get a few $100,000 together, you've got to get a developer, and that's the path that you start on. And then once you've got something, then you find out that it's all wrong and you've got to start again. With Codeless, what it really enables you to do is, because it's so fast, is you can build, even if it's not everything in its entirety, you can build something really quickly and test and test and test. So with Codeless, you're able to interact with your customers a lot more, which means that you can get feedback faster and ultimately be earning revenue faster as well, because your speed to market. Because if you kind of think, your iteration loops are a lot faster than if you were building in sort of one big chunk, you've not got as much time. And that's something that's really powerful in making sure that that voice of customer is included.
And that speed also affects certain small businesses that may win some tourism awards.
I think everyone just remembers the address, don't they? So Dark Stry, we were really fortunate last year. We were a finalist in the WA Tourism Awards for new tourism business. And then this year, sort of practicing what we preach and growing at scale, is we were a finalist in cultural tourism. And we're also a finalist in the tour operator categories as well. So that's really exciting because, when you're in the same category as some people like the WA Museum and Gravity Discovery Centre, that's when you can be quite confident that you've built something of value that will have longevity to it. But yes, I did quite enjoy. I managed to find a gorgeous bright green sequin dress.
And it looks
And
gorgeous.
it's
Yes.
very, very similar. So for those who are on the podcast online, you can see my nails as well. It's not a coincidence that these nails are Dark Stry green, as I now like to call them. But yeah, it really, I think what that also highlights is as business owners, how important it is to celebrate, because you're constantly thinking about what's next. Things like being part of the WA Tourism Awards was really good for us, because we went with some of our photographers who worked with us on the Perth to Pinnacles tour that we launched recently. So we went started out 30 days challenge, building walking tours. But this year, using the same Codeless technology, we've been able to build an Australian first driving tour as well. So it really shows the power of Codeless technology, because while Dark Stry started as something to respond to COVID and getting people back into our cities, I think a lot of us recently have booked flights, tried to book holidays, those types of things. And the tourism industry's got a different challenge now, which is all about capacity, because there's so many of us who want to be traveling, but there's not the same capacity in our hotels, in our tours, in the places to stay that there was previously. So the need that Dark Stry serves now is for being able to tell the stories that aren't always told, and also being able to get people into spaces that aren't as crowded. So it's really showing that with that sort of Codeless technology platform, it really does help you grow from your initial idea and pivot as your whole market and industry change as well.
I must admit, I love your Codeless technology, mostly because it's giving us something to do on the school holidays, because we're planning to do the Perth to Pinnacles tour, because it's so easy. With car technology now, we can run it through our own speakers and feed the kids, and they might actually learn something.
But, I think that was one of my favorite tours to build.
Yeah, and because you were talking about, with this Codeless technology, you've managed to geocache kind of like the native stories of the land as well, which we were talking before about, these stories aren't allowed to be told outside of that area. So working, with our amazing Indigenous elders and having those stories geocached is phenomenal. So being able to take the kids to listen to those stories, because you can't always, have that time to take them everywhere.
And one of the things that, particularly in the design of the driving tour, is working with parents with children of different ages. So when we sort of talk about the power of being able to take feedback on and rapidly make changes, is that when we were doing testing with different people as part of this tour, we took out groups of people from overseas. We sent off families with young kids, families with older kids, couples, older families, so that we could really test to make sure that there's something in there for everyone. And one of the things that's really interesting is we now work with a lot of different copywriters of all different ages and all different backgrounds, so that we can make sure that the way that we're telling different stories in different places is as representative as we can make it.
So, as our favorite serial entrepreneur and starting a few businesses, how does this Codeless technology work with part of your existing technology?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So we're talking about Dark Stry at the moment, but my passion for Codeless technology actually started with my first startup, which was using Codeless technology to help people automate writing their business plans. So while that business doesn't exist in its current form anymore, a lot of the IP that was developed as part of that now sits within effectively our overarching group of companies called the Exchange Collective. And one of the great things about Codeless technology is it means for someone like me who's got a finger in everything, it also means that I then don't have to worry about having an army of developers that I need to find salaries for. And it means that we don't need to stress about upgrades and those types of things. Because if you kind of think every time that your phone gets upgraded, that means that all of the apps that run on it need to be upgraded as well. And so by making sure you have picked the right codeless technology, it means that like Dark Stry gets upgraded regularly. So both from a security point of view and a new features point of view, but it's not something that I need to worry about as an entrepreneur. So that means that when I'm not working with Dark Stry on introducing new tours for there, I also have a farm in the wheat belt, which is a pretty cool project. And we're experimenting with a few different technologies out there as well, centered around a 1950s farm stay house. So we're using a few different cool things out there, all completely codeless, obviously, but what that means is like yesterday, for example, we're like, okay, cool, it's Christmas. We want to be able to do gift cards. So participating as part of the tourism industry is a really big thing for them, being able to do gift cards as part of a few campaigns that are running. So codeless technology, half an hour, I was able to spin up a website to sell gift cards that's integrated into our booking system for the farm. So it kind of gives you that idea of once you start to move through that learning curve, as soon as you've got an idea or a problem, you're able to quickly go, oh, okay, what do I already know? Okay, I can take a copy of this and use it to solve a different kind of problem.
How steep did you find that learning curve is? Because I like, obviously we've spoken outside of podcasts, and I know that you are what I call a fully immersive person. You don't put a toe in the water, you just dive straight in. How did you find that learning curve? Because you don't come from a technology background.
No. So I actually started life. So my claim to fame is I was on the drive show of Prime Balls FM in regional Indonesia. That was my one time that I put my media degree to good use. But I have worked in the space between technology and people who use it for a long time. And what I would say is it still just comes down to problem definition. So it's not the technology understanding that's really important for Codeless. It's actually that ability to be able to listen to customers and what is it that they really want and what is the problem that you really need to solve. So that sort of initial kind of deep thinking is really powerful. One of the things that there's lots of online resources for those who are wanting to dip their toe into the water. There's a great startup organisation in Perth called Codeless Odyssey, who run online training courses for people who are interested in starting their codeless journey. But I think for me, one of my big pieces of advice is, while I am an all-in person, is really to try a few things and prototype early. So rather than fixating on picking a particular technology and sticking with it, most of these codeless technologies come with a free trial period. So what I've found in my experience is pick 2 or 3 that you think will best suit the requirements, because you've already spoken to your customer. You've already got a list of what kinds of features you think that you'll need. what you would do is pick 2 or 3, and during the trial period, just have a really quick prototype to see how easy is that particular technology to use. And what it also helps you to do is some of these tools can get very expensive very quickly. So you'll be able to work out, do I need the gold membership and then this is going to be really expensive, or do I only need the bronze membership and actually this is going to be quite affordable. So as I said, nail your problems. So start with all the basics that you would. So for those who haven't come across it, there's this great tool called the Lean Canvas model. And what the Lean Canvas model helps you do is on a page, just kind of map out all of the core fundamentals of your idea. Because in the technology industry, there can be a temptation to kind of have that built in, and they will come. Whereas something like the Lean Canvas model helps you kind of think about, well, who are my customers? What problem am I kind of try to solve? If I build this thing, how am I actually going to sell it? How am I going to make money with it? Like could look cool, but it could be like, nah, you've not really solved a hair on fire problem. It might be, hey, that's cool, but no one's going to hand over their hard-earned cash unless their hair's on fire. So that's what that lean canvas model really helps you do, is go, okay, on paper, have I nailed it before I start playing with the codeless stuff?
Yeah. So, so when you say, I'm interested, I want to learn codeless tech. First step you'd say?
Work out the problem you're trying to solve. So I think the challenge with codeless technologies, it's such a big, broad topic. It's really thinking about, I've got a problem that I want to solve using technology. So really nail that problem definition. So don't even touch anything until you're absolutely certain that, yep, cool, you've had a good crack at solving the problem. And then kind of think about what is the kind of stuff that's on my shopping list. So if I use Dark Stry as an example, for Dark Stry, we knew that we wanted to build walking tours because my co-founder and I, when we travel, the thing that we absolutely love is walking tours. Absolutely love them. And so we're like, well, how could we do that in a codeless way that's actually kind of cool? So we looked at some examples overseas. So we did a market scan to say, okay, there might not be anything like this in Australia, but what's overseas that we can learn from? So we had a sneaky look at what some of our competitors were doing to get a feel for what we liked and didn't like. And what was really interesting as part of that is we got really interested in immersive technology. So that's when you hold up your phone in the real world and then you overlay. So like we did on the women's tour where you could see Mary Rain projected and all of her hotels over the front of the Wentworth building. That was actually when we first started working on Dark Stry. That was one of the things that we thought would really be our point of differentiation, was using that kind of technology. So when we started to look at what codeless platform we would use, my big thing was it needs to work with augmented reality technology. It needs to have particular types of mapping in it. It needs to work offline. It needs to have audio in it. And it needs to be able to support video and photos. So we kind of had, that was our shopping list. And then when we knew that that was our shopping list, we started looking for codeless platforms that had all of those features. And what we also did as part of that kind of picking the right one was, once you've kind of picked a few, is to look at who their customers are. So the codeless platform that we use is used by the US Parks and Wildlife Service. It's used by major museums globally. It's used also in Australia, and it's even used in Western Australia. So there's a great organisation in WA called Nature Play, which is all about getting kids out exact same technology platform. So we actually had a play with Nature Play and some of the other people who are using it quite differently to get a feel to make sure that, hey, is this something that we're confident, because you not only want something that is going to work for you on day one, but you want to get a feel for, are they going to have a good support plan? So it's not like you've built it and then the company goes broke 6 months later. If it's something that you want to keep over time, you need to kind of kick the tires a little and check to make sure that whoever you're building your codeless solution in has got a roadmap that fits with where you think this business is going to go.
Brilliant. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, as we went through the walking tour, and for those who don't know, we actually have the walking tours for our Business Women Australia, our Christmas event with Erin, and they're going to all be on display. When you talked about the immersive technology, I think once we discovered it was there was like this collective gasp of, because we're all walking around, we've got our AirPods in, you know, we're listening to this tour, we're having a chat, and all of a sudden, you know, these things start coming up on the screen. So that was really fun. That was one of my favorite things to see, because we weren't expecting it.
It's like an Easter egg.
It really, actually, I think that's how, when I told my son, that's exactly how, because he's a technology expert, not me. But I'm so excited. So your Dark Story currently has, you got 3?
So we've got 4 walking tours in the Perth CBD. So you've got the Enterprising Women's Tour that you mentioned. We've got the True Crime Tour that I know is going to be a favourite of yours, Leanne. We've got a very classic colonial history tour called Boom and Bust. And our Perth Historical Pub Crawl is currently going through a refresh. And it will be coming out shortly, rebranded as Tales on Tap. So, as I said, we found out the hard way that probably seven stops is a few too many. So it's going
Sounds
through
like you found out the fun way.
It is actually, because people ask us, and then we've got the driving tours, so Perth to Pinnacles. So one of the most common questions I get asked is, what are the most popular tours? And it's really interesting because it's seasonal. So what we find, and that different things, depending on where someone buys a tour. So because we sell direct through our website, and then we also sell through third parties to international tourists as well, it's really interesting to see how time of year and where we sell changes what people are interested in. So there's a lot in there for people who, entrepreneurs who are listening, is, you know, it's not just the codeless technology that you're building, but also thinking about that whole sales funnel. Because what we've learned as part of our entrepreneurship journey, so I think we're up to business number 4 now, is that your place, that where you sell is something, has a symbiotic relationship with your product. So your product doesn't sit in a vacuum. It is very much influenced by where you sell, who you sell to, and particularly in the tourism market, time of year. So I think no one will be surprised to hear that right now, Perth to Pinnacles coming into summer is one of our most popular tours. But over winter, our most popular tour was that classical Boom and Bust history tour.
And I'm guessing over Halloween,
yeah, so Murder and Carb's always an interesting one. I think it's one of those ones that none of the international tourists, it seems to be very much, we find the demand for Murder and Macabre, so that true crime tour is very much coming from Perth locals, which is always fascinating.
I think especially because in Perth we don't expect it to be part of our history, you know, because we have this very almost vanilla version of our history. And, you know, the enterprising women, when we're talking about, you know, a brothel owner who took the chicken factory to court and won, even though she had an illegal business, you know, realizing that we have this massive, intricate history in Perth, which, you know, we haven't been bustling that long, was fantastic.
Yeah.
So
And
to
I
know that
think
we've
that
got that
really,
dark story.
yeah, and it really highlights that that product market fit, isn't it? Which is that all of the traditional tour companies are, and rightfully, because you know they can only run one tour a day, most of the departures that they're doing are the more sort of focused, so general kind of history of Perth or Fremantle, because they've kind of got to go for a one size fits all model. What we're able to do because of the platform that we've got is we can focus on telling those stories that don't get told as often. So yeah, I've got the Enterprising Women Tour is definitely the one that's near and dear to my heart. And it's one that I focused on because what I noticed in working on some of our other tours was how few women appeared in the history books. And so that tour was all about acknowledging, and this is where augmented reality gets really cool, is because there's no statues of women in Perth other than Bessie Reeshby, which is a whole other story, that are in a women's likeness. So the only statue that we've got in Perth CBD that is of a female that has her face on it is an 85-year-old woman is portrayed looking like a teenager. So it's really interesting that the one time that we show a fantastic inspiring woman from history, we don't represent her how she looked, and we also put her on the place that she fought against, which is kind of completely fascinating. But that's where, as I was saying, like having those types of platforms, so whether we're talking about Dark Story or other kinds of commercial ideas that people might have, is that codeless technology enables you to target, so create products and target customers that you wouldn't historically be able to target with a more traditional business model.
Well, we knew that we would always go through half an hour of a podcast super quickly. I just want to thank you again for your time. You're always so generous with it and bringing to light a lot of codeless technology, because a lot of people still don't understand the availability of it or how it operates. So really appreciate you, your codeless tech, and your walking tours. So thank you so much for joining us there.
Thanks for having me, Leanne.
Bye.